Okay.
So, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. And just in case you forgot, my name is Jonathan Gardner. I'm a state and national advocate, a cancer survivor, and I happen to have autism. I am someone who learned very early in life what it feels like to be misunderstood, when it feels like to not be listened to, and what it means when people finally do. Today, I want to share how I arrived into advocacy and why it matters so much to me and where that journey has brought me today. Because advocacy did not begin for me as a title or a role. It began with lived experience. And over time, it became a purpose. Next slide. When I was little, my family knew I was developing differently from my brother. I had severe sensory challenges, I had severe colic, food allergies, and separation anxiety. Loud noises overwhelmed me, and certain textures were hard for me. I was also nonverbal until I was 5 years old. And now, like Alicia, my mother can't get me to be quiet. But from the very beginning, my family worked hard to make sure I felt safe, supported, and understood. My mom especially became my safe person. That feeling of trust mattered more than other people probably realized. It gave me a foundation. I was diagnosed with autism when I was 2 years old, and I received early intervention services. Those early supports made a big difference in my life. They helped me build confidence, communication, and skills. They also showed my family something very important. When support is based on understanding the person, it can change everything. Next slide.
I'm trying, Jonathan. There you go.
No worries. I just want to make sure you heard. In preschool and first grade, I had people around me who worked with my mom and tried to understand what I needed. But then I got to second grade and things changed. My accommodations were ignored, and I struggled verbally to communicate my needs. I was bullied for wearing Sesame Street shirts. You can see one of them right there. Something that made me happy and comfortable. My teachers dismissed my struggles, even flicked off my hat off my head. Something I needed for sensory support, and was an accommodation in my IEP. One of many that weren't followed. The pressure to learn in a way that didn't work for me was overwhelming, and I had no way to communicate my distress. So I began hurting myself, because I was trying to communicate to others that I needed support. I felt that I did not belong. Long story short, things got so bad one day that I tried to jump out of a classroom window. No child should ever feel that way. Next slide, please. Thank you. Things got worse. After the first traumatic event, I was placed in an out-of-district school where I was promised safety. But what I got was more trauma. When I became overwhelmed and cried, my teacher took me into a timeout room and restrained me. She sat on me and pushed me onto the ground, making me feel like how I would say at the time, like I was on that there was hot lava running through my body. This happened over and over. I was terrified and I needed my mom. But she was not allowed to come in. I needed someone to listen, but no one did. My trust in teachers, in schools, in adults, it became shattered. When my mom found out what was happening to me by walking in on it, she pulled me out of school, and I was homeschooled from that point on. It was the only place that I finally felt safe to learn. Next slide, please. You people remember that person. That was years ago, but I am still living with the consequences of those actions today. I've been diagnosed with by my neurologist with PTSD from my school-based trauma. I have severe trust issues because of what happened to me. Imagine being a child and realizing that the very people who are there to help you are the ones that are hurting you. Now, imagine growing up and trying to navigate the world with that fear still inside of you. This is why I fight for change. No child should ever feel unsafe in a place meant for learning. No child should be restrained because they are overwhelmed. No child should be ignored when they say they are in distress. And no child should carry this trauma into adulthood. But the experience is also where my advocacy begins. This is why I serve on the board of Mass Advocates for Children. This organization fights to make sure all kids, especially those facing barriers, have a fair chance to learn, grow, and thrive. Next slide, please. It took some time, but my mom began speaking up about what happened to me. It took some time, but my mom began speaking up about what happened to me. Something important became clear. Even though I could not use my own voice to speak up, my story mattered. And if telling my story could help protect someone else, then I wanted to do that. So with the support of my family, lots of therapy, and the Disability Law Center and other advocates, my mom was able to write my story down, and long story short, my story helped pass the Massachusetts Restraints and Seclusion Law. This law regulates how schools can use physical restraints, seclusion, making sure there is accountability and protections for students. That was my first taste of advocacy, and it gave me purpose. I realized that my story could make a difference, not just for me, but for others. Advocacy became not just a way to fight for my rights, but for the rights of all people. I knew from a young age that I wanted to help others, and that's what I set out to do. Throughout the time it took to pass this bill, which was years, my mom and I began to build a lifelong relationship with one of the lawyers from the Disability Law Center, who told me something when I was very young that still has stuck with me today, and I carry into all of my advocacy work. When we all work together, the world is a better place. Next slide, please. As I got older, I began to understand advocacy in a much bigger way. Advocacy is not just about one law. It's not just about one issue. It's about making sure people with disabilities are included in decisions that affect our lives. Too often, decisions are made for us instead of with us. Advocacy pushes back against that. For me, advocacy is how we create change. It's about standing up for what's right, making our voices heard, no matter how you can communicate, and working to improve laws, policies, and systems that affect our lives. Next slide, please. Some people think advocacy has to be complicated, but I don't see it that way. To me, advocacy is simple, telling the truth about your life so that someone else can understand what needs to change. That is the power of story. And the power of my personal story became even more real for me in healthcare. As a cancer survivor who happens to have autism, I've seen firsthand how sharing my experiences can help others understand the barriers people with disabilities face, especially in healthcare. For me, it makes sure that people with disabilities receive fair and equal health care. I've been denied care because of assumptions made about my autism that could have cost me my life. That's discrimination, and it needs to change. This is why I advocate for bills such as the hospital training bill, healthcare discrimination bill and now serve as the official ambassador of Operation House Call through the ARC in Massachusetts. As the official ambassador for Operation House Call, I help educate medical students about how to better care for patients with intellectual and developmental disabilities and/or autism. Jossie, who is here today, right there specifically, is one of our co-teachers, and so is Angela's son, Isaiah, who is thankfully helping me with the slides. And together, we all create change because we know what it feels like when healthcare providers do not understand that behaviors can be communication. Give me a second. That patients with disabilities deserve respect, that accommodations matter, that trust matters, that listening can save lives, and that seeing the person first can change everything. This is all advocacy. Advocacy is not only about changing laws, it is also about changing minds, changing systems, and changing the way people treat one another. Because the more stories we share, the stronger this movement becomes. Next slide, please. My cancer journey was one of the hardest experiences of my life. I went through chemotherapy, radiation, exhaustion, and fear, and so many moments of uncertainty. I lost my hair, my strength, and at times my hope. There was even one point when I hit a wall emotionally and mentally. I was, just to give you an idea of where I was at this point, I was 6 months into chemotherapy and I want to say like 23 days probably into radiation around that. That sounds about right? We're going with that then. So, give me a second. I remember coming home one day and just crying in my room. I felt like I could not keep going with these treatments. My mom eventually came in. I told my mom after a long rant I wanted to stop, even if it meant the tumor would win. But this is where another huge part of my advocacy journey comes in: supported decision making. When I was 16, to fast forward a little bit back, I began using supported decision making. Supported decision making is an alternative to guardianship where the person chooses trusted supporters to help them understand options, process information, and make decisions while still remaining the decision maker in their own life. That matters so much during cancer treatment. Now, back to the lowest moment of my cancer journey. My mom came back into my room, not as my mom, not as Nancy Gardner, but as my support person. She told me that if I put my faith in her as my support person, she would do everything she could to help me figure out a better way forward. With my permission, she contacted my medical team. Together, they came up with a new plan. Then I was able to talk with my supporters, ask questions, and process everything, and make my own decision about how to move forward. That plan ultimately saved my life, physically and mentally. And it also protected my mental health. That experience showed me that when people with disabilities are respected as decision makers in their own lives, it is not just empowering, it can be life-saving. That's why I advocate so strongly for supported decision making and serve as the co-chair for the Massachusetts Supported Decision Making Coalition. When we need it most, we face significant pushback from the hospitals for choosing this approach. No one should have to fight to be supported by the people they trust. I want to make sure that others who are sick can make decisions with the support they choose without unnecessary barriers standing in their way. You can see this is not just a policy issue to me, it's personal. Next slide, please. And before I continue, supported decision making is an alternative to guardianship, not a replacement. Just wanted to put that out there immediately. So, back on topic. My cancer journey also opened another door in my advocacy. As a sarcoma survivor, I know how important early diagnosis, proper care, research, and awareness are. Sarcoma is rare, and too many people do not know enough about it. Too many patients and families feel alone, unseen, or delayed in getting answers. Less than 1% of funding goes to sarcoma research, and this is costing lives every single day. That is one of the reasons why I have used my voice not only for disability rights, but also for cancer and sarcoma advocacy. I had the honor last year of bringing this advocacy to Capitol Hill, and my mom and I will be back again in July doing the same thing. Standing on Capitol Hill and speaking with lawmakers about issues that impact people with disabilities and people with rare medical conditions has been one of the most empowering experiences of my life. This is why I'm proud to be associated with the National Sarcoma Foundation of America. Last year, when my mom and I went to Washington, D.C. to testify, we found out quickly that creating awareness and change for sarcoma research was not going to happen quickly. So we brought it back to the state level, where we are working with one of my favorite champions at the State House to hopefully bring a bill forward about sarcoma awareness and research in the next year. To me, that work matters deeply, because sarcoma advocacy is not just about medicine, it's about people, it's about survival. It's also about making sure no one falls through the cracks. It is also about making sure that rare does not mean invisible. And when I stand and share my story, I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm speaking for other patients, other survivors, other families, and other people who may happen to have a disability and fighting cancer, whose voice deserves to be heard as well. Next slide, please. Over time, my advocacy has continued to grow as I have gone through life and transitions. I'm fully directed my services through the Department of Developmental Services. While I had prepared for this transition for years with support from my mom, I had a strong person-centered plan and knew what supports I would need to be successful. Despite this preparation, my transition was not smoothest. Instead, it became a long and emotional, exhausting process that required me to repeatedly prove my ability and advocate for choices I was told self-direction was meant to protect. One of my primary goals was to have my mother serve as my paid job coach due to past trauma that makes trust and regulation essential for my ability to work safely and successfully. Rather than having my self-knowledge respected, my choices were questioned. Rather than having my self-knowledge respected, and my abilities were doubted, which included my request to manage my own financial budget account. It took months of meeting, documentation, and advocacy before the system took the time to truly understand me as a person, not just a file. While my situation was eventually resolved, it made me realize that not every individual has the resources or support to fight that hard. This experience brought me to become part of the self-determination advocacy board, where I hope to continue my perspective so self-determination policies better reflect the experiences of the people they are meant to support. Thank you, you're very proactive this time.
I'm learning.
You're seeing the hints.
When you put the paper up, I know what to do.
Human rights have always mattered to me because I know what it feels like when they're ignored, when I was restrained, when doctors didn't listen, when my voice wasn't believed. I felt invisible. But I've seen what happens when people do care, when they listen, include, and truly believe in me. To me, human rights are about how we treat each other every day, by listening, including, and respecting every single person. That's how we show that every life has value. And that is why I am proud to serve as a human rights advocacy committee, committee for the Department of Developmental Services. Through my work there, I work with others to make sure people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and/or autism are treated fairly and have their rights respected. Next slide. Thank you. Police officers are often the first people to respond when something goes wrong. They are the front of the line. They have the power to turn a crisis into a moment of connection, or a moment of tragedy. This is why I advocate for change in police training and the blue envelope. The blue envelope bill is important to me because I have personally been in situations where I cannot speak due to stress. This bill provides a simple way to communicate that will help keep individuals with autism safe during interactions with police while driving or being a passenger. And police training is important to me because I believe no one should be punished for communicating differently. And no person with a disability should be treated as a threat just because their brain works differently than any of yours. Next one, please. I have advocated at the State House, I've spoken on Capitol Hill, I've met with lawmakers, and I've used my experience, my lived experience to help them understand why these issues are not abstract. They are real. They affect real people, real families, real lives. And I do not take that lightly. Every time I speak, I think about the younger versions of me, the child who was overwhelmed, unheard, and hurt. I think about the cancer patient version of me, in pain, trying to be taken seriously. I think about the patients and the families still waiting to be heard. And I still remember why I do this. I advocate because people with disabilities deserve to live full and self-determination lives. Give me a second. I advocate because no child should be traumatized in a school. I advocate because no patient should be discriminated against because of their disability. I advocate because rare cancer patients deserve awareness, research, and urgency and hope. I advocate because everyone deserves the chance to live their best lives. And that brings me to where I am today. Today, advocacy is not just something I do. It is part of who I am. It's how I turn pain into purpose. It's how I honor what I have survived. It's how I help create a better future for others. Excuse me. And I am proud of that. Advocacy is powerful, but it is even more powerful when we do it together. That is one of the greatest lessons I've learned. Yes, one voice matters, but many voices together can create real change. Please remember your story matters, your life matters, your voice matters. Thank you for letting me share my journey with you today, and I hope my story reminds you that advocacy can bring in the hardest places, but it can grow into something powerful enough to change lives. Thank you.